All right, so here we go. I'm going to do the 4x4x48 challenge. This is a running endurance challenge that has been put out there by David Goggins. And it basically requires me to run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. And that'll be a total of 48 miles. I'm starting tonight at 8 p.m. One of the reasons I want to do this video is because I want to use this opportunity to raise awareness for the Outside Sustainable Landscape Collaborative and the Florida Native and Resilient Plant Survey that we are opening up on Monday. This is a survey of 85 native plants and also there's a few Florida-friendly, Florida-resilient plants in there. We also have 31 aquatics. The plants are grouped into different categories, including ground covers, shrubs, trees, grasses, and so forth. And we're asking experts across the state who are involved in landscape or restoration, conservation, ecology, or any related field, people who may have some expertise to share about these plants. We're asking them to get online, log in, and start to share their thoughts via the survey. So it's a long survey. It's gonna take some commitment and a little bit of perseverance. So I figured, hey, what better way to talk about commitment and perseverance than to show you guys my commitment and perseverance through this challenge. I don't know that I will complete this challenge. I think I will. I plan on it. But it's a test, and there's a little bit of an unknown factor to this. So I'm gonna do my best, and I'm asking those of you guys who are interested in this that maybe if I complete this challenge, you'll go out there and complete the survey. Okay, so I just completed the first run. That's 1 down, 11 more to go. First one was easy. The first plant I wanna talk about is frog fruit. That's ground cover. I think the Latin name is Phylla nordiflora. This is a really cool plant. I like it a lot. It grows close to the ground. I think it's also called turkey tangle frog fruit, which is a good name because the runners kind of tangle together. It creates a nice little mat. It has a very small white and brown and blue flower. Not super showy, but I think it's pretty. It's a good turf alternative. We're growing this as part of our ground cover trials at Cherrylake, so we planted it in a couple different areas. I've got it at my house. We have it as a single species ground cover, and then I've also experimented by mixing this in with a couple other ones, a couple other species of ground cover. So it seems pretty good. It likes full sun, likes it a little bit moist. Doesn't need irrigation post-establishment. And it's great for butterflies. It attracts white peacocks and the common buckeye, which is a beautiful butterfly, and also I think it's called a crescent fawn. So you'll see these butterflies just fluttering all around the frog fruit if you have a nice stand of it. And yeah, it's something to consider. It's a Florida native, grows everywhere in the wild, but we can cultivate it and grow it in our landscapes. So that's my first plant, that's my first run, and I'll see you guys in 4 hours. All right, so I just finished my second run. That's 8 miles down, 40 miles to go. I'm gonna stick with the ground cover category for my next plant. This one is called Pityopsis graminifolia, common name silk grass. This is not a grass, it's a perennial herb in the aster family. And it's quite nice. It grows to be 1 to 2 feet tall. It has a yellow bloom, which will bloom summer, fall, and into the early winter. It has a silvery green, evergreen foliage, and it looks really nice. I think it's native throughout Florida and grows in sandy soils in the sandhills, scrubby flatwoods, pine flatwoods. We're growing it at Cherrylake as part of our ground cover trials. So I'm still getting familiar with this plant. I did see on the Florida Wildflower Foundation website that the The name Pityopsis comes from the Greek word pitis, which means pine. And I guess Pitis was in Greek mythology a nymph that was transformed into a pine by a Greek god. And I don't know why they did that to her, so I'm gonna have to look that up. Anyhow, that's Pityopsis graminifolia, and I'm done with the second run. I'll see you guys in 4 hours after my third run. Bye. Okay, I just finished my third run, so I'm a quarter of the way through the challenge. Interesting thing, I wasn't expecting to see anybody on the trail at 4 a.m. in the morning, but there was one guy out there running, and when we passed each other, he asked me if I was doing the 4x4x48. It turns out he's doing it too, so it's nice to know I'm not alone out there. I think there's a lot of people doing this all over the world, actually, and my brother-in-law, David, is doing this with me. He's running around by his house tonight, but we're gonna do the rest of the runs together starting at 8 this morning. So far so good. I'm gonna stick with ground covers for one more, and then I'll move on to another category. My last ground cover I want to share is Swamp Twin Flower, and I'm probably gonna botch the Latin name on this one, but I think it's Dichoristes humistrata, something like that. Swamp Twin Flower is a really handsome ground cover. Actually, I like it a lot. It's got small purple flowers. We use this at our first trials at Cherrylake. We planted mimosa, swamp twin flower, and frog fruit at our workforce housing building, each one of them in their own plot. And I think of the three, the swamp twin flower looks the most ornamental, so to speak. It's kind of keeps a neat habit and seems to be most organized. There's other types of twin flowers, including the twin flower oblongifolia, which is a little bit more upright in its habit, and also I think it is more adapted to sandier, drier soils. So they're quite different, actually, the twin flower oblongifolia and the twin flower humistrata. So those are some ground covers for you. Running at 8 a.m. with my brother-in-law, and I think one of my friends is going to be joining us, so should be very merry, and hopefully everything keeps going smooth through the rest of this challenge. I'll see you guys in 4 hours. Okay, that's run number 5. I'm starting to feel my legs a little bit tired, but I'm still able to do it. So far so good, I guess, and it's daylight, so that's a plus. The next plant I want to share is a grass. It's probably one that everybody already knows, but it's such a great one. It's worth mentioning. It's muley grass, Muhlenbergia capillaris, and this is one that's already widely used in ornamental commercial landscapes, but it's one of my favorites. It has an amazing fall bloom. So the month of October, you get a most incredible display of the purple plumes, and if they're planted in large mass plantings, it can be really spectacular. The muley grass, I think it grows on the pine flatwoods and the coastal uplands of Florida naturally, but it's super well adapted. It could pretty much be planted anywhere. It doesn't really need very much irrigation at all. I planted a large amount in a meadow that I'm developing at my house, and I didn't even give it any establishment water, just a little bit of rainfall, and it's doing fine. What else can I say about it? I saw it at Siesta Key. I thought it was really neat to see. I think they were doing some restoration plantings right along the beaches, and there's some large plantings of muley right there on the Gulf, so it must be pretty salt tolerant. All right, I'll see you in another 4 hours. All right, I'm back from another run. That's a total of 5 runs and 20 miles. I'm gonna keep going with the grasses. This next grass maybe is a little less commonly used than muley grass, at least in the landscape. This one's called Andropogon tenareus. And there are quite a few Andropogon grasses. They're a little hard to tell apart. I'm still learning the difference between the different ones, but the Andropogon tenareus is also known as the split-beard bluestem. So Andropogon grasses are seen everywhere in Florida and pinelands, scrublands, prairies. They grow along the roadsides. They kind of just grow naturally in undisturbed sites. You'll see them in a lot of parks, a lot of conservation and restoration areas. It's clumping grass. It tends to be pretty narrow and tall, maybe 3 to 4 feet tall. And the split-beard bluestem has a split beard, so the bloom is split. It's slender. It has a white, fluffy seed bloom, so it tends to catch the light and glitter. It's really pretty as a base plant for a meadow or prairie planting. I think it would look great in naturalistic landscapes, maybe around buffers, borders, edge plantings. It's a native, and it basically needs very little care. It needs sandy, well-drained soils, very adapted to drought, doesn't need very much water at all for establishment or for management. So that's Andropogon. Interesting, since we're talking etymology. Andro in Greek means man, and pogon means beard. So Andropogon means bearded man. Think ZZ Top. All right. Halfway there. It's a good feeling. My body is feeling pretty good, but I definitely feel that with each run, I'm kind of stacking on another layer of general fatigue. So I think the real test begins tonight, and but I'm gonna finish. So my next plant is needle palm. This is Rhapidophyllum hystrix. And it's native to the southeast United States. It's distributed throughout Central Florida, North Florida, the Panhandle. This is a palm. It's a fan palm, evergreen, dark green, has dark, thin stems that grow in a clump with needles on the stem, and it'll get to be 6 to 8 feet tall by 6 to 8 feet wide. It's typically growing in the shade in hydric soils in wet forest or bottomlands along streams, hydric bluffs, and but it's pretty well adaptable, and it can grow in full sun. It likes high organic soils, well drained, but again, it probably could be adapted to a variety of soils. I like this palm a lot. It's really cold hardy. I think there's some that go all the way up to Washington, D.C. So cold hardy palms is something that people are really looking for. And it's also something that grows in the shade. It'll grow right under live oaks, which is hard to find plants that'll thrive under live oaks. So there's one. Needle palms, I think, look good in mass plantings. They could look great on buffers, screening. They do well in pots and patios, by pools. So there's a number of applications for them. And that'll be the only palm I share today, but there's a whole category of palms on the survey, so check that out. And hopefully I finish the next 24 miles and I can convince you to go on our website and complete the survey this spring. Okay, that's number 7. 5 more to go. This next set of 3 plants will be large shrubs, small tree category. I think this is an underrepresented category in the nursery and landscape. There's a lot of potential with natives. So the first one is Simpson Stopper. And I think this one is really winning in a lot of different ways. It's an evergreen shrub that has a beautiful white bloom, red berries. It's fragrant. It has exfoliating bark with a rich cinnamon color. It's drought tolerant. Once you get it established, you could turn off the irrigation. It's native, of course, native to Florida from 8B to 11. It's also found a lot in the Caribbean, Central America, all the way down to Colombia and Venezuela. But it's cold hardy, at least to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, possibly more. And there's a couple different cultivars, including a dwarf compacta. But otherwise, the Simpson Stopper can grow to 20 feet tall. So it really turns into a beautiful small tree if you let it. The champion Simpson Stopper is an Okeechobee. It's 38 feet tall. So there's a lot of potential to develop these as trees or small trees. I think it would be a great replacement for ligustrum. You could grow it as a multi-stem and limb it up so you could really showcase that beautiful exfoliating bark. You know, could be a drawback, could be an advantage, but it's a slower grower. So in the nursery, it's maybe a disadvantage, but in the landscape, it's a huge advantage. Slow growing plants in the landscape are easy maintenance. They don't require a lot of pruning. They don't require a lot of care. They're more resilient, more adapted to periods of scarcity and drought. So overall, this is a winner. I don't know why we don't see more of it in bigger sizes. Cherrylake's gonna do some trials and continue to explore if we can produce this, but I think it's a winner. Now it's getting hard. It's the middle of the night, and this one was tough, but I can see the finish line. Got 4 more runs to go and 1 more 4 a.m. run. I figure if I can get through this night, it's gonna be all downhill from there once the sun rises. So anyhow, this next one is another one of these large shrubs, small trees. This one, few people may know about. It's called sparkleberry, and that's Vaccinium arboretum. I really like this plant. I don't think it's utilized nearly enough, and it's a plant with a lot of potential. Basically, it's in the same family as blueberries and cranberries, and it's native to Florida. It's very adaptable to a wide range of different soils, from sandy scrub hills to wet, forested bottomlands. Kind of likes, I think, moist and acidic soil by preference, but as I mentioned, it's very adaptable. All of these native plants are really great for wildlife. I didn't mention that Simpson Stopper is fantastic for wildlife. It is. There's just so many other things to talk about with that one. Sparkleberry is no different. In fact, it may be one of the best plants you can plant for wildlife. It's going to support a lot of different species, or butterflies and pollinators and birds and rabbits and all kinds of things. So that's one advantage, but it's pretty. It has early spring bloom. It's in bloom right now. White flowers all over, dark glossy green foliage. That was the last night run, and it was hard. Definitely getting into the rounds that we came here for. This is the part where you really get to experience the challenge. So, all's good. Got 1 final quarter to go. This next plant is my last of the 3 large shrubs, small trees. It's a Yaupon holly, Ilex vomitoria. I'm going to talk about the upright Yaupon holly. More common in the landscape industry is the weeping Yaupon and also the dwarf Yaupon. The upright is underutilized in my opinion. It's a beautiful Small tree can grow to 15 feet, multi-trunk typically. And yopons in general are great for winter color. You're gonna get red berries, yellow and orange in some cases. That is if you have the female plants. But with these berries, you're gonna attract a lot of wildlife. You're gonna get a beautiful winter color. And then in the spring when they bloom, they have lovely white flowers that attract lots of pollinators. So it's a really great plant for wildlife, but it's also drought tolerant, extremely hardy. There's very little that can affect this plant. It's not susceptible to any serious pests and disease. It doesn't require irrigation after establishment. It's a slow grower, so you're not gonna have a lot of pruning. So from a landscape management perspective, it's really fantastic. And Native Americans used to drink this daily as a caffeinated tea, and occasionally they would use it in purging ceremonies and rituals where they would drink or consume very high quantity, and it would induce vomiting, hence the name Ilex vomitoria. Ten down, 2 to go. It is not getting any easier, but I can tell I'm gonna finish now, even if I have to walk a little bit. But so let's move on to trees. I've got 3 more segments and I wanna talk about a few trees. So the first one is Quercus austrina. That's a bluff oak. And this is a oak tree that'll grow 40 to 60 feet tall, about 35 to 40 feet wide. Has a lobe-shaped leaf, which makes it interesting. Most of the oaks we have are not like that. We need some other oaks than just live oak to put in our streetscapes and parking lots, and the bluff oak would be a great candidate. It's pretty well adapted to a lot of different sites. It could grow in sandy, well-drained soils, but it could also grow in floodplains. So it could be found in the wild, growing near riverbanks where you have red maples. So it'll take inundation, but in a sandy soil, it'll throw down taproot. So we have 5 bluff oaks on our property in Groveland, which is on the Sand Ridge. They're beautiful. So it's a great alternative if you're tired of using live oak absolutely everywhere. Bluff oak, it's a handsome tree. It is deciduous, but that shouldn't stop you. Quercus austrina. Here we go. That's 44 miles, 1 more segment to go. My pace is slowing down, but that's okay, because the point of this challenge is not speed, it's sustaining, being able to make it all the way through. And a lot of the plants that I've been talking about actually are slow growing plants. I think this is an aspect of our landscapes that's been really overlooked. You know, a lot of the economic factors in the nursery industry and in the construction industry is favoring fast growing plants because they're cheaper to produce and you can meet spec faster and cheaper and so forth. So we have a lot of fast growing plants throughout our landscapes, and there's a need and a place for fast growing plants, but you don't want your entire landscape to be made up of fast growing plants. You want a lot of slow growers in there. The slow growing plants, as I mentioned before, are more resilient. They are better able to deal with drought and scarcity. So these slow growing plants, once they're established, they're going to require a lot less maintenance. So big plug for slow growing natives. My next tree is a slow growing native. It's the longleaf pine, Pinus palustris. This is a keystone species, and originally it covered the Gulf states in the southeast from Virginia to East Texas and all throughout Florida. There was over 90 million acres of longleaf pine, but it was so abundant that early settlers didn't think twice about cutting it down. It was a really great resource for lumber, railroad building, shipbuilding, etc. By 1920, there was down to 3% of the original acres. And and it's a slow growing pine. It takes 150 years to reach maturity at about 100 feet tall. It'll live long, over 300 years. And it gets its name longleaf because it has the longest needle of any of the eastern pines. It is a keystone species, as I mentioned, so it's a host to so many other species, including over 30 endangered species of birds and animals. So I think we should grow it. It has a place in our landscapes, and if we're patient and understand the value of a slower growing tree, I think we'll be happy to plant this all over our commercial landscapes. That's it, 48 miles. I did it. It was quite the experience. So those of you guys who made it to the end of this video, thanks for hanging out with me. I got one more tree. It's my favorite, all-time favorite. I think this is the ultimate champion of plants. It's the bald cypress, Taxodium disticum. It's a fast-growing tree, but it lives for a really long time. It'll get to be thousands of years old. It can pretty much thrive in any soil type except highly alkaline soils. But other than that, it could be submerged in water. It could be up high on a sandhill, everything in between. It's a keystone species. This tree is all over the southeast United States. It's got a huge range. It goes all the way up to zone 4 and all the way down to zone 10. It's supporting hundreds of species, and it's absolutely fabulous. It's completely underappreciated in my opinion. Even though people know the bald cypress, they plant the bald cypress, it's still really underutilized because you could plant this in all kinds of applications, parking lots, street trees, parks, not just stormwater ponds. So I'll leave you with that. That's my favorite tree. We went over 12 plants. There's 85 plants plus 31 aquatics on this survey. It's got tons of really interesting plants. I hope you'll check it out. You can go to the website, www.outsidecollab.com. You can log in so you can take this survey at your own pace, save your progress, come back. It's going to be open for several months. We really want your input. We want your comments. We're crowdsourcing the information, and then it's going to be shared. So this is really an industry-wide project. I did this 4x4x48 for myself, for testing myself and seeing how far I could go. But I also did it because I wanted to draw attention to this survey, and I really hope that this survey will be a success. And it's going to be a success if you participate. So go to the website, www.outsidecollab.com, and help us out. Share your knowledge. Thank you.